Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Katherine and I am currently a second year officially PhD student studying history at The Ohio State University. I've officially finished all of my first year coursework, so I think that's the first time I've ever said out loud that I'm a second year student. That's crazy. But in today's video, I wanted to take a second to look back and reflect on my first year and just kind of talk about the lessons that I learned, some things that I maybe wish I would have done, which I don't really want to look at any regrets because so much of my first year was determined by COVID. And so a lot of the things that I wish I would have done, I legitimately could not have done. But still, just take a moment and share with you guys what I took away from my first year as a PhD student. So, have my laptop here with some notes that I've jotted down. I really just have 6 big takeaways of things that were really helpful to me or things that I learned along the way. So, number 1 lesson that I learned was having a structured schedule and having a good workspace. I think these go hand in hand together. I've talked about it before. I personally like to schedule my days like a 9 to 5, and I have my office, which I set up over the course of several months. I finally just got a bookshelf in here, but having a space that was specifically dedicated to school and my work was really important to me personally. Just having that working mindset and really just feeling more productive. My schedule is not going to work for everyone, so I would encourage you in your first year to figure out what works best for you. Some of my friends in my cohort, they do not do 9 to 5 schedules, which is totally fine because they know what works for them. One of my friends works best in the middle of the night and he'll work from like 8 p.m. until 5 a.m., which I could not do, but that's what works for him. And he has a schedule that goes right along with that. So figure out a schedule that works best for you and stick to it. It'll help you be more productive and just stay attuned to the fact that you're actually doing a job and not just continuing school from undergrad. Okay, my number 2 lesson learned and big takeaway is use your resources, whatever those resources may be. Whether it's resources from the school, I've talked about therapy before. If your school has anything like that you can do and it's something you think you would like to have at your disposal, totally do that. I got connected with my therapist in August just to help ease me with my transition, and I've been really thankful for that. But not just that, I'm thinking of other professors, other students, people in older cohort years that you can ask questions to. Now, this will kind of depend on the school. I think some programs, to be honest, I've heard are more toxic than others, and people feel like they can't go to other students for help because it will show weakness or, they're competing for the same things. I'm really fortunate here at Ohio State. It's a pretty collaborative environment, and very early on I got connected with 2 students who are in their 4th year of studies here who work with one of my advisors, and anytime I've had a question about pretty much anything, I have been able to send them an email, get their advice, get their feedback, and really lean on them for help, because the truth is, in your PhD journey, there's gonna be a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks, a lot of figure it out on your own. But what I figured out is you don't have to figure it out all on your own, and you can really use other people. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to try and get advice. The worst a person can say is no or not help you, which I literally never encountered here. People were always super helpful. For example, this morning I just sent out an email to somebody who was a grader for a professor in the fall that I'd like to work with, and I just asked him for some advice about how it was, how many hours he worked. He got back to me literally within 2 hours of me sending the email. So big takeaway is use your resources, whether it's people or the school. Use what is there for you. Take advantage of it because you are getting paid, but not necessarily all that much. So use whatever you can to help make sure that you are optimizing and maximizing your experience, especially in the first year when you're still in that adjustment period. Okay, my number 3 tip or lesson learned is to use your classes to help narrow down your dissertation. Now, people come in with totally different stages of what their idea is when they come in. Some people already have a super specific idea. Mine was not so much. I just really knew that I wanted to do women in social and political movements in World War I, which over the course of this year has morphed into something totally different. But I tried to make sure that within all my classes, if I had any final papers that I could tailor to my own research, I always made sure it was kind of floating around the orbit of what I wanted my dissertation topic to be. Take advantage of those course papers. Most professors at the PhD level want final papers to be helpful for you, not just some sort of superfluous task that is just for them to grade. So I took advantage, wrote some historiography papers, I explored some different facets broadly of my topic. One of my papers last semester was on women in international peace movements after World War I. It's a little farther afield than what my actual dissertation topic is, but it's still important because it involves women in World War I. So anything you can do to try and help narrow down your focus your first year is gonna just help you in the long run. Okay, number 4 lesson learned, and this is a big one. Everyone is on their own journey. Your PhD program is no one else's. I think this one is really hard to remember because with your cohort, with people in older class years, it's really easy to start playing the comparison game. Fortunately, it's been a little easier for me and my cohort because we're so small and no one is in the modern European field in my course here. I'm the only one. So it's easier for me to know, okay, yeah, I don't need to pay attention to what they're doing because they're not even in my field. But when it comes to things like planning for generals, planning your dissertation, planning meetings with professors, it can be really easy to go, oh, you're doing that, what should I be doing? What is your timeline? We should be on the same timeline. The truth of the matter is everyone's PhD experience goes on a different timeline, generally for the most part, especially in liberal arts for something like history. And you're doing your own topic. No one else is doing your topic in the slightest. So don't let other people's trajectory stray you off course. Just remember, your PhD journey is your own. It's no one else's. You're going on a timeline that works best for you and your advisor. And don't let other people stress you out if they're talking about what they are doing. That's what it's supposed to be at the PhD level. Okay, number 5, this one is important for me personally. I really took advantage of this first year to plan out the next few years really early on. I'd say probably September. I already planned out with my advisor a general trajectory for the next 5-6 years, which doesn't necessarily mean that everything is gonna go according to plan, but you wanna make sure you know what classes you have to take, when you're gonna have to take them. Do you have to take any summer classes? When would you ideally like to do your general exams, or some people call them comprehensive exams? When should you start thinking about publishing papers or trying to do that? When should you be applying for grants? Now, that's not to stress anybody out, but Lord knows it did stress me out this year. But it is important to at least be thinking about those things. That way in the back of your mind, you know when you should be hitting certain benchmarks. So for me, very early on, I decided I wanted to try and do my general exams in the spring of my second year, which means by the end of this year, I already needed to have my committee, which we are just now finishing on shaping that up. I'm waiting on one last person for a meeting next week. But anyways, because early on I had already set what I wanted to do on my journey, it made me more conscious and aware of all of my decisions, because 6 years is a long time for a PhD, but also 6 years is not that long for a PhD. And you want to optimize all of your time, and you don't want to get to the end of your first year and realize you haven't done anything to help your end goal besides taking a few classes. So I would encourage anyone who's in their first year to already be thinking ahead. Some people who aren't planners, maybe you don't want to do that because that's stressful, totally fine. But I do think it's good for everyone to at least be slightly thinking about what the next few years are going to look like as you begin your journey. And the 6th thing that was a big lesson learned was to always keep your eye on why you decided to do a PhD. This year especially, it was hard at times to remember why I wanted to do this, considering all of my classes were on Zoom, done from the comfort of my own apartment in a new city, in a new state, where I didn't know anyone and I couldn't go anywhere because of COVID. But just remembering your passion and why you agreed to do this, because a PhD is an investment. It's also not just investment, it's your life, it's your future. And if you forget why you wanted to do it in the first place, then you're not gonna have any motivation, you're not gonna have any productivity, and you're not gonna enjoy the work. So keeping my mind on the reasons why I wanted to do a PhD helped, for the most part, keep me really excited about my work for the majority of the year. Now, there are some things that I wish I would have done differently during my first year. However, I again qualify this statement by saying it was a worldwide pandemic and a lot of these things I couldn't change, so I don't necessarily regret them. But they are things that I would encourage first year students who don't have to deal with a global pandemic to try and do. So number one would be getting involved in something. I did not get involved in anything. I don't even know what kind of on-campus activities really there are for grad students. I wouldn't necessarily say I wish I would have gotten involved in something specifically like a campus organization, even if it wasn't school related, but just getting involved in something. I'm not sure, joining a intramural city sports league, or I don't know, going to a yoga studio somewhere. I don't really know what I'm thinking of, but just having something outside of school would have been nice to have a new community, take my mind off of school where I'm forced to not think about school for just a few hours every week. So had this not been COVID, I definitely would have gotten involved in doing something. I was involved in things both with my master's and my undergrad, and I think that is important for me personally, and so I really wish that I would have had the chance to do that. Number two is have a better work-life balance. People always talk about this, especially for grad students, how it's really hard to have a work-life balance, and that gets even harder in COVID when your office is your home and you don't leave ever. And this meant that I was always thinking about school, and when I wasn't working on anything, I started feeling guilty for the work that I could be doing, which meant that even when I took time off, it wasn't relaxing because I was still thinking, oh, well, I'm home, my computer's sitting right in front of me. Should I be working on this project? Should I be doing extra research? Which meant that the work-life balance, well, there really was no balance. It was lots of work, and when I wasn't working, I was thinking about work, which is not so healthy. That was definitely something I wish I would have learned to have a better hold on, actually finding a better work-life balance. And my number three, again, don't want to say regret. My number three thing that I wish I would have changed was to make friends earlier. Again, this is hard because of COVID, because when you're on Zoom all the time, me personally, I found it very awkward to send any messages to people to be like, oh, hey, do you want to be friends? And now I'm super tight with two of the people in my cohort, but we didn't really start doing anything until spring semester. Now, again, this is due to a global pandemic because I took everything really seriously and I wasn't going out, I wasn't doing anything in the fall. But it did mean that the fall and part of the spring was just a very lonely, trying time because I didn't really have any friends in my program. So had it not been COVID, I would have encouraged myself to try and reach out and make those connections early on, because now that I've made those connections, they are super great, and we were our own little support system and network here, clinging on to each other really for dear life, especially at the end of the semester. But I just wish that I would have made a more concerted effort in the fall to get to know them better and to make a few friends even outside of my cohort. But again, like I said, these come with the qualifications of these things were very difficult because of the global pandemic, so I'm trying to allow myself a little grace with that. But with that said, those are my big takeaways, my lessons learned, my things I wish I would have done for the first year of my PhD. And now we are going off into our second year and maybe my last year of coursework, which would be awesome before starting the research and dissertation process, but we will have to see how that all pans out. That is all I have for today. I hope this video was useful for any of you guys who are beginning your PhD journey in the fall. Just some things to keep in mind. And if you just finished your first year of PhD, I'd love to know what kind of lessons you learned, what were the big takeaways, and maybe anything you'd like to change, or some things that you think you did really well and really successfully, because we have to celebrate our wins as well. But that is all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe if you want to keep seeing more grad school content. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.